All
All
right.
right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Jump Master X podcast. Now, if you've been training hard and your vertical's been stuck, this episode is for you. You're not maxed out in terms of your potential as an athlete and how high you can jump. You're just stuck simply right now. So, we're going to talk about that and how to break a vertical jump plateau. So,
Mm-hmm.
firstly, why do plateaus happen? Number one, your body adapts to what you repeat. So that's actually, it's a good thing until it stops working. Like most people, they hit a wall because of one of these four things. They're doing the same things for too long, the same exercises, the same drills, the same plyometrics. They're doing sprinting in the same way. They're not ever pushing themselves when they go to jump. Number two, not actually getting stronger anymore. A lot of people, they train hard, but 6 months go by, we've had athletes that have had this happen and we've had to tell them, like, look, you need to stop trying to push his weights up. You need to eat a little bit more. You need to actually get stronger because a lot of people, they get caught up in, this, that, all these little nuances of training, but they're not actually getting stronger and they're squatting the same as they were 6 months ago. And that's a problem.
That is a problem.
Number three, too much volume, not enough rest. So overtraining, that's a real thing. And number four, just ignoring weaknesses. So say you might have weak quads or you might have weak ankles or weak calves or your posterior chain just isn't like your glutes hamstring just isn't where it needs to be relative to other muscle groups. Maybe it's even your upper body. Maybe you've been skipping upper body. It could be one of
Or
those things.
you're not naturally elastic. Maybe that's holding you back, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure,
Man.
for sure. So like your training has to evolve. You can't just copy what worked last month, 3 months ago, 6 months
Mhm.
ago. You have to keep evolving your training and keep progressing it correctly in order to break a plateau. So where a lot of people get stuck is like every athlete, like for you and me, Tom, every athlete we train, we approach their training. Some guys have the same weak link, right? So we approach their training similarly.
Correct.
But for other guys we coach, it's different. And for a lot of people, we approach their training differently, quite simply because they have different weak links. So, for example, you touched on that before, like if someone lacks or has a huge elastic deficit. They're not very springy. Their tendons are not very, I guess, they're not very stiff and you don't bounce off the ground well. That might be something you have to emphasize in your training, or it could be strength. Maybe you have that. Maybe you're naturally a faster guy, but you don't jump high just because you're too weak and you need to get stronger. And this
Yeah,
can also, yeah.
yeah. I was gonna say we have a good example of a guy. His name is Orion. He's from Perth, WA, and he was a very fast sprinter. Like he competed in track and he was running, I believe he's running sub 11s. So he's a pretty fast guy, right? But he didn't have like the most bounce. He was maybe getting, he's like 6 foot, keep in mind. He was probably getting like his wrists at the rim, but he was not strong at all. So he couldn't actually pull on his tendon hard enough because he had very stiff tendons, naturally very elastic, but he couldn't even pull on his tendons hard enough to get the return out of it that he could, if he got stronger. So for him, it was literally a case of getting stronger. And I've never seen someone, well, he'd be like top three fastest bounce transformations because like he can windmill off the dribble now. So like just that to that is insane just from getting stronger. Someone who's, I mean, I don't know if he's naturally athletic, but just, through the nature of doing sprint training, track and all that, that wasn't his weak link at that point in time.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like both of us, we're clear examples of that. We're totally opposites in terms of how we approach training. For myself, I have a huge deficit in terms of speed and elasticity and just being overall fast. So I have to emphasize that far more than you, Tom, in my training in order to progress and not plateau. And you're the opposite. You can get away
Yeah.
with not doing as much of that stuff, but you can't get away with not getting stronger and prioritizing
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
strength work, right? So complete opposite. So if I did your training, I would not progress. But if you did my training, you might progress, but not as fast as you do now.
Right. Yeah. That's a good way. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
No, for sure. So key point here is find your weak link. Find the thing you need to work on most and emphasize that in your training continuously. So for myself, I can't never not emphasize that because it's my weak link. And if I do, I just get slower. My jumps look terrible. And if I get stronger, it doesn't transfer.
Yeah, to be honest, like, everyone falls on a spectrum in terms of what we're talking about here. And I'd say you're definitely at one end. Like, you'd probably top five people who get slow from like, if you stop sprinting for a whole let's say 5 weeks, I think your bounce would go down, one of the fastest out of like everyone we train.
Yeah.
Pretty
No, for
insane.
sure.
Pretty insane.
No, it is kind of insane. It just all comes down to genetics. The better your genetics, the more you can get away with slacking on your training and not being as dialed in because your genetics, it's
Yeah.
facts, they just carry. They carry you more. That's why guys like John Morant and Anthony Edwards in the NBA, they don't really train that hard for the vertical, but they still jump higher because it's genetics. But someone that say trains to the same height of vertical, they would see much more of a decrease in the season
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
just
take your
because they
brother, for
can't push
example,
and train
bro.
as hard.
Take Hayden, for example, who's Austin's brother, who's a couple years younger than him. Very similar genetically to Austin because obviously he's like his full biological brother. I remember he ran like a 4 or 5K with like no training and he got like a pretty decent time. I don't know the exact time, but it was like quite a respectable time. And he was not training for endurance at all at that time.
Yeah.
So
No, no,
naturally,
no.
quite, on the slower twitch side, right?
Yeah, definitely an interesting case.
Mm.
So, Tom, why does someone have to continuously evolve their training and I guess periodize their training correctly to ensure the
Hmm.
body gets overloaded over time? Why can't they just do the same thing forever or the
Hmm.
exact same exercises forever?
So this is
Why does
something,
someone need to
yeah.
go about it in this way?
This is something I did and made a mistake of. My first like year of training, maybe like my first 6 months before I got coaching, I would just do the exact same workout every single, leg day, and it would be the same weight. And it worked for a decent amount of time, but I think it was more the case I was just like spamming jumps. That's the reason I was getting better, not actually the weight room. Maybe a little bit of the weight room at the start, but I was just doing the same weights, same exercises, same sets, same rep. So obviously I wasn't progressing in the weight room, and then my vertical plateaued, which is, the title of this podcast. And how did I get around that? Obviously I got coaching, but that coaching involved completely changing my training up and like what saying before, attacking my weak points, and that was strength. Like I'd never been under a barbell before. I was literally doing like maybe 15 kilo in each hand, like half squats. Like realistically, it's not that much. It's not going to really move the needle too much. So started doing barbell work, Olympic lifting work, all that kind of stuff. And my vertical shot up. I was still jumping very frequently, so that helped. But the main, I guess, point I'm trying to make is you always got to make sure you're obviously attacking your weak points, but doing it in a way where you're not going to get training monotony and you're going to be doing the same thing over and over and over because, yeah, you're not going to adapt as quick because the first time your body sees a stimuli or a stimulus is the most adaptation you'll ever get from it. So the second time, a little bit less, third time, a little bit less. So you always got to change it up. Does that mean you can only back squat once, you know, one cycle of your whole career? No. There is obviously like different things you can do around like a certain exercise. You can play with the sets, reps, of course, you can play with the weight. So, you will see the same exercises here and there, but the overall thing is you can't have the exact same workout, 3 months
No,
straight.
yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Like, it's kind of like imagine, well, we've all had this experience. We haven't eaten for a long time, few hours, all day, whatever. And then you got to eat something. And the first bite you have of that food, especially if it tastes really good, the flavor hits extra hard, right? Like it really hits you. But
Hmm.
then the more
Hmm.
mouthfuls you take, the more you eat, the flavor kind of numbs a bit and you don't taste it as much as you did on that first time after eating for a very long time, right?
That's
Similar
facts,
thing
bro.
happens with training, and
Yeah.
that's how similar to not exactly the same, but similar to how your body works. If you just do the same thing, the first time you do it, yeah, it might work amazing, especially if you're a beginner. After 3 months of spamming that same thing, you're gonna find it's not working as well, and you have to take a different approach to things in order to keep progressing.
Pretty simple.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So, okay. So, another big reason one of you or someone might plateau is due to sleep and recovery. You might be training right. You might be not eating right. Sorry. You might be training right. You might be working hard. Your program might be perfect, whatever. All right. But if you're not sleeping, you're stressed constantly. You're not allowing enough recovery between workouts, and that can be a reason to plateau as well. Give you guys another really good
Yep.
analogy. It's kind of like a plant. If you're trying to grow a plant and you're not watering it, it's not getting enough sun, what happens? It doesn't grow.
Yeah, you got to do both. You
Doesn't get
can't,
bigger.
yeah. You can have all the sunlight in the world, but it doesn't get water, it's going to die. You can give it all the water in the world, doesn't get sunlight, it's going to die.
Exactly. Exactly. So you got to treat your body the same. You got to ensure you give it the nutrients it needs to ensure it's adapting to the training and growing in the way of getting faster, getting more explosive. And a lot of this and most of this happens when you're sleeping. So if you're not sleeping enough, literally slowing your progress down. And I'm sure everyone wants to progress as fast as possible here, right? So if you do, if you're not sleeping enough, you're literally progressing slower because your body's adapting slower.
Yeah. I would say outside of food, just like put food aside, just assume someone's getting all their protein and, macro, micronutrients in. I'd say sleep is 90 to 95% of your recovery. You can ice bath all day. You can infrared sauna, whatever you want to do all day long. You're not getting your 8 hours. Don't matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, and part of this is not doing too much. So like another huge reason you might be plateaued is because you might just be doing too much. You might be killing yourself too much. And even if some of those things like sleep, recovery, all that is on point, if you're just killing yourself and murdering your body and beating a dead horse, then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that can lead to a plateau. It's happened to me in the past as well. When I was training 6 days a week for like 3 hours, and yeah, I was eating plenty. I was in a calorie surplus. I was sleeping plenty, but I wasn't progressing. I wasn't getting stronger because my body just couldn't recover from the sheer amount of
Sure, bro.
workload I was putting it under. So that might be something to look at. And everyone's different in terms of the amount
Yeah.
of
About to
workload they
say,
can
yeah.
handle
Yeah.
as well. So you're going to have to experiment with this. So like, for example, we'll use Tom and I again because we're opposites. So it's really handy we have that. Like for instance, if I did Tom's training, I would not progress because it's just too hard for me. I'm a little bitch. He can train harder than me. His body can handle more than me. You know. Versus if he did my training, he might not progress because it's too easy.
Potentially.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like for your like when you program for people, Tom, like our athletes, and so before we get into that, if you
Mhm.
guys want to train and progress and avoid plateaus and skyrocket your vertical, there's a link down below. You can apply for coaching, check that
Mhm.
out. But to jump back into the podcast, if you're writing our athletes training, Tom, like what are some of the differences in terms of volume, like for guys just going off the top
Okay.
of your head?
Yeah. So
Spit out a few examples.
everyone, first of all, has a maximal or maximum like recovery amount that they can recover from. So, Austin's might be a little bit less, like a weekly volume he can recover from is less than me. And maybe there's someone who can recover from more volume than me. For example, Shiv, one of our athletes, I'd say he probably can handle the most volume out of anyone that we train. But yeah, you
Yeah.
really have to take that into account. And then, there's factors like, exams. When you have exams, you're obviously stressed, you're studying, you're using your brain a lot. So your training probably has to equate for that. And, you might need to go a little bit easier for that time period because you're not going to be able to recover from as much. All right. As well as, let's say you go from playing one basketball game a week to three basketball games a week plus the training, for the first little bit, you're definitely going to have to take away some of the weight room volume because you're adding in more stuff. And then if you were to do the same amount of weight room stuff, it's just going to, think of it like a glass. The glass you're pouring water in is, the training. You're going to spill the glass, basically. There's going to be too much water for the glass, aka you're not going to recover from the volume. You're going to start going backwards. And, you'll be in the gym. You won't be able to lift as many weights. You're going to be weaker. If you're getting weaker, you're not going to jump higher, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. It's really weird experience to have when you're training really hard and pushing yourself to the limit, but then you get weaker. It's really weird. You're like, then you start freaking
Yeah.
out. You're like,
Start
what's
questioning
happening? Blah,
everything.
blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. And
Yeah.
the answer is never push harder in that scenario. Is, kind of bitch out a little bit, train less. So it's kind
Yes.
of ironic.
The only time
But
I'd say that
anyways,
doesn't apply would be, say you think you're overtraining and you're like, okay, I need to take a step back instead of pushing harder. But then you look at your recovery and you've been sleeping terrible and eating terrible. In that situation, potentially you can still continue to train how you're training, but you got to make sure you lock in, the other variables. Try and eliminate as many like outside factors as you can. And then that, if training's going good, it's because the training is good. It's not because of an outside variable. Makes it very easy on yourself to know, what to change.
awesome point. Awesome point. Last point is your mindset.
Mentality.
So it might be a limiting belief. You got to question yourself. Do you really believe you can achieve like the goals you have? Like, because if you don't believe it, your body's going to follow suit. Like the mind is a very powerful, and you will surprise yourself how much you can achieve if you just genuinely believe in yourself and visualize yourself doing those things. Because might sound cliche to say, but anything can be possible with a strong mindset. You know, you think of the best athletes ever, you know, you never hear them really doubting
No,
themselves. They
no.
believe they can do anything, and that's why they achieve, probably the biggest reason why they achieve those great feats, those the accomplishments like no one else can believe, you know? And it all comes down to the
Mhm,
mind at the end of the day. So you need to believe in yourself, and you need to believe that you can do it. And that can be a reason you plateau, because we've had athletes where if they get stuck, or say they go through a little bit of a rut and they're missing dunks, they can stop believing in themselves, they can start doubting themselves, and then that can very easily hold them back, even though they're actually jumping a little bit higher than before. They're just not confident, so they're not hitting the dunks they want to hit, just due to that, because they're just doubting themselves. They're just overthinking all the time in sessions, and
mhm.
you know, it's nothing to do with anything else but what's going on in their head.
Yeah. The only thing I would add to that, that's a very good point that, yeah, all the best athletes definitely have that mindset, and you see it literally across every sport. Michael Jordan, for example, one of the greatest basketball players. Some people think he's the best. Whatever you think, he's up there, right? And you just like watch The Last Dance, that documentary, and it just shows you the mentality. But the point I was going to say is try and minimize, because I know everyone does this and it's like it's almost like human nature, but try and minimize the negative self-talk you have, whether that's internal, talking to yourself, whether that's like, between a set or whatever, just like around the house, or saying it out loud. I hear people say, shout out one of our athletes. I always tell him off for this. Irving Tan. He's a very hard worker. He works very hard. He never skips a session. He loves dunk training. But I think his limiting factor right now is his mindset. He needs to talk to himself nicer, because he's very harsh on himself. And he was, tell himself that like I suck, da da da, and I'm guilty of this. I'm sure you're guilty of this, and everyone probably is. But you gotta almost be nicer to yourself, because if you're telling yourself you can't do it and you suck, eventually your actions and where everything leads to might become that. You know?
Yeah, well, no, no, not might, definitely. Like, if you tell
Yeah,
yourself
you
you
gotta. Yeah,
suck, what's gonna happen? You're gonna suck. As simple as that, really.
it's yeah,
So you gotta, yeah, you gotta reframe that self talk into what really helps. I actually learned this at dunk camp a couple years ago. Is this is from
was it Riley Jensen?
sports. I don't know, but a sports psychologist.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
instead of like focusing on what not to do, or don't do this, don't do that, I shouldn't do that, focus, don't think about that at all. Just focus on what you need to do. Focus on what you need to do to succeed. Don't think about what not to do, focus on what you need to do.
Mm,
And that simple mindset reframe can just change a lot, because then you're no longer thinking, oh, don't do this, or what if that happens, or what if I throw it there and that. Instead, you focus on, oh, I need to do this, I need to throw the ball there, I need to catch the ball there, I need to do that. So then you're only focusing on that at that point in time, and that helps a lot. If another really good tip is, if you get nervous, you experience the same chemical release when you get excited and nervous. It's the exact same thing. So when you get nervous, don't tell yourself you're nervous. Tell yourself you're just excited, because it's the exact same thing. It's
yep.
proven in science.
Basketball
So
context. We'll use this in a basketball context. Say you've got two free throws. First one's to tie the game. Second one's to win it. It's after the siren, so after the buzzer, and you're shooting it. The worst thing you can do is say things. I can't miss this. Don't miss this. If you miss this, you're gonna suck. Everyone's gonna hate you. Just think that you put all the training in. You've done everything you can up until that point, and literally all you can do is your best in that moment. Just enjoy the moment, and yeah, like just literally do your best. You tell yourself, I'm going to suck and I suck, I'm going to miss these, but I guarantee you your chance of missing is so much higher. That's not just opinion. That's like science fact.
no, for sure. Okay. So one of our athletes, Hack, was
Carlos.
plotted for, I don't even know, maybe a year.
Yeah, it'd be
And
upwards. Yeah.
why was he stuck for that long?
One reason is just he went on a bit of a bench arc, and he'll admit it. He got a little bit tubby, so he wasn't pushing strength and getting as many jump reps in. But that was like a minor thing. That was only maybe like a month or 2 months at max. But the main thing was just him locking in on getting stronger. His squat didn't necessarily go up all that much, maybe 5 kilos, but maybe his body weight went up about 2 kilos. So relative strength didn't increase too much. But the second he locked in, he's even like, counting his protein now. The second he locked in his strength and really just like changed his mindset and said, this is something I need to do if I want to jump higher, not, if I get stronger, I get stronger. He made sure he got stronger. And then, yeah, had some of the best months of jumping he's ever had. I'd say this month is easily the best he's ever had, jumping well over 40 inches.
Yeah. No, for sure. Like he's doing his best ever because simply he ate better and got stronger, and that's what he needed to
Mm.
focus on, and that was his individual weaknesses. And we held him accountable, very accountable along the whole way, as well to ensure he was getting what he needs to get done and pushing hard enough. And now he's what, jumping 41, maybe 42
Yeah, maybe
inches,
42, bro.
probably jumping 35 before. So quite insane.
Yeah, and he's on his
Quite
way
insane.
to East Bay. The amount of
Yeah,
back rims this guy's had on that dunk is almost impressive. He'll get
no,
us
for
in though.
sure.
He'll get a hat.
He will. He will. Okay, so to close out this podcast, like if you're in a plateau, number one, figure out your limiting factor, your weakness, what you need to work on. Like, is it certain muscle groups? Is it a certain quality, speed, elasticity,
Mm.
strength? Like one of those things. Maybe it's jump technique. We definitely didn't cover everything in this podcast. Maybe it's jump technique. One of those things.
Yeah.
You need to identify it. Like number two, change the stimulus. You can't just do the same thing forever and expect to progress. Number three could be a recovery factor. You could be training too hard, or your sleep or your nutrition is off. Number four, mindsets. Do not let your mind hold you back. Build a stronger mindset. And yeah, we hope this podcast helped you out, guys. And if you want to apply for coaching, again, a link down below, and you can apply for coaching, and you can get coached by Jordan, myself, and Tom. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode.
See you later.